At some point in our lives, we all come across the feeling that something isn't quite right in a relationship, something that makes us question the sincerity of the people around us. Sometimes, friendships that we believe to be true turn out to be empty, harmful, or even toxic. The idea of being friends with someone and, in return, receiving support, trust, and genuine companionship is one of the cornerstones of our most important social relationships. However, there are those friendships that insidiously emotionally drain us, make us feel isolated, undervalued, and, as hard as it is to admit, even used. These are false friendships, and although they often disguise themselves as sincere relationships, they can be incredibly damaging to our mental and emotional health. False friendships are not easily identifiable. They camouflage themselves under a veil of sympathy, apparent empathy, and generous actions that, at first glance, seem to be the characteristics of a true friendship. They infiltrate our lives so smoothly that, often, we don't notice until the emotional damage has already been done. You start to realize that the relationship is not what it seemed, but this only becomes clear when the marks of emotional wear have already settled deeply. What initially seemed like a genuine friendship begins to show signs of an unequal pattern of interaction. You give much more than you receive, and when you need something in return, the other person disappears or shows up with empty promises and flimsy excuses. The worst part is that these friendships are, for the most part, so subtle in their manipulation that often we don't even realize how much they are affecting us. It is important to understand that, at its core, a true friendship is marked by reciprocity. When you relate to someone sincerely, you share not only moments of joy but also challenges, sorrows, and lessons. True friendship is built on the foundation of mutual support and trust, where both parties feel equally valued. False friendships, on the other hand, are emotional parasites. They feed off your energy, your time, your attention, and often, your self-esteem. The exchange is not balanced because, while you dedicate yourself to the other person is often only concerned with getting what they need from you. It may be in search of advice, practical help in times of need, or even a mirror to validate their insecurities. This type of relationship can seem appealing at first, especially because the person presenting themselves as a friend seems so caring and available. But over time, you begin to notice that it is always you who is giving, while the other simply consumes without returning anything in exchange. As these relationships go on, you start to realize that the emotional toll begins to show. What once seemed like a warm friendship is now just a relationship marked by anxiety and frustration. You start to feel drained, emotionally exhausted, and this fatigue is not just psychological. It affects your physical health too. Symptoms of being stuck in a false friendship can manifest in various ways, such as insomnia, difficulty concentrating, constant fatigue, and even headaches and digestive issues. The constant tension you feel when trying to please the other person, when striving to maintain appearances, ends up generating stress that affects your entire body. It's as if one part of you is always tense, alert, trying to avoid any confrontation or uncomfortable situation, while the other part feels exhausted, as if you are constantly sinking into a sea of contradictory emotions. And paradoxically, the more you try to please, the more isolated you feel. The person you are relating to may often show up as distant when you need them most, or may avoid any kind of emotional involvement that doesn't serve their own convenience. True friendship should be based on mutual support, a willingness to listen, and moments of genuine exchange. But in false friendships, this rarely happens. Instead of receiving help when you are struggling, you find yourself in the role of constantly giving support, without ever experiencing reciprocal exchange. This creates an emotional imbalance that, over time, can make you question your own value, your emotions, and even your ability to maintain healthy relationships. In some of these friendships, what seems to be a true relationship of support may, in fact, be a manipulation strategy. When you start to pull away or set boundaries, the other person may react in unexpected ways. They may accuse you of being selfish, not caring, or even being difficult. And what's more insidious, these accusations are often thrown at you with such intensity that they make you doubt yourself. You start to question whether you are being overly sensitive, whether you should really be so concerned about the other person's feelings, or if, in fact, you are exaggerating. This is one of the most effective tricks of false friendships, making you feel guilty for trying to protect yourself emotionally, for setting boundaries that, in reality, are necessary for your own mental health. Moreover, false friendships have the power to make you feel like you are constantly failing. When you are the only one trying to maintain the relationship, and the other seems to do little or nothing to nurture the friendship, a feeling of inadequacy begins to arise. You start questioning whether you are being a good person, whether you are doing enough, whether you truly deserve friendships that are reciprocal. This naturally affects your self-esteem. You become increasingly dependent on the other person's approval, while your own identity and your own feelings are slowly subordinated to the will and needs of someone who, deep down, doesn't really care about you. False friendships are one of the greatest sources of emotional exhaustion. When you realize the impact these relationships can have on your life, it's possible that you've already experienced deep levels of frustration, anger, sadness, or even despair. These feelings are the result of broken trust, ongoing disappointment, and the lack of reciprocity. And it is precisely because false friendships have this ability to create emotional dependence, manipulate feelings, and make you feel guilty that they become so difficult to break free from. So, how can we identify a false friendship before it causes irreparable damage? The answer is not always simple, because false friendships usually develop in subtle ways. However, there are clear signs that, when carefully observed, can help you realize that something isn't right. Often, you find yourself in a friendship where you are constantly the only one taking the initiative, making contact, organizing meetings. This may be a sign that the other person is not genuinely interested in the friendship, but is merely taking advantage of your availability. Another indication that you are in a false friendship is when the person only shows up when they need something. It could be a favor, advice, or even a moment of validation for their insecurities. When you need support the most, this person simply disappears or, at best, offers empty words of consolation. A true friendship is characterized by balance, and in a false friendship, that balance is missing. You also begin to realize that the other person's empathy is superficial or non-existent. They may say they care, but their actions show the opposite. And emotional manipulation, no matter how difficult it is to recognize, is one of the most powerful ways false friendships control you. When you feel constantly guilty, when you question your own intentions and feelings due to the other person's behavior, you are being manipulated in a subtle way. And perhaps the greatest sign of all is the overwhelming feeling of exhaustion. If, after spending time with this person, you feel drained, devalued, or even sad, it is a clear sign that this friendship is no longer working for you. The effect of these imbalanced relationships on your emotional well-being is profound. And while the consequences may not always be immediate, the accumulated impact can be devastating. Dealing with false friendships requires courage. Recognizing that you are being harmed is the first step, and although the process of pulling away or ending the friendship may be painful, it is necessary for your well-being. Setting healthy boundaries is essential. You have the right to protect your emotional energy, to choose the people you want to engage with, and to seek friendships that bring genuine growth and support. By cutting ties with false friendships, you make room for people who truly care about you, who share your values, and who contribute to your growth. And above all, you begin to understand that in order to have true relationships, you must also be true to yourself, respecting your own feelings, needs, and boundaries.